Right, there we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Nomidio webinar about simple rollout of passwordless biometric authentication. Thank you very much for joining us on this rather dim and dark evening. Today, I am going to go through a few things to talk about Nomidio and the biometric identity system that we have. So just going to spend a minute or two telling you about Nomidio and who we are and what we do, to give you a bit of context really, and then talk about biometric digital identity. And then the point of the whole thing really here is to show you the ease with which a biometric identity service can be deployed. So I've got a full demo of that, which should take about 20 minutes to deploy the full Nomidio biometric identity service against Salesforce as a login authentication service. And then we'll have some Q&A. So without further ado, if my screen will move on, let's tell you briefly about Nomidio. So Nomidio is a London-based tech startup where we concentrate almost entirely around biometric identity management. And we have two products which center around the Nomidio Identity Cloud, which provide biometric authentication services to biometrically authenticate individuals. And those two products, IDAS is targeted primarily at the contact center channel, so authenticating callers when they call into a contact center or contact a company through chat or chatbots, and using Nomidio as a service to identify them and authenticate them. And Nomidio OpenID is a service using the same identity cloud and is provided for doing authentication for people when they log on to websites, log on to apps, log on to corporate single sign-on, and so on. So a web-based method of authenticating against biometric identity. So that's what we do as a business. As I said, we're focused around biometric identity. So really just to give a bit of context around what that means and why it's particularly special and unique, I suppose, in the world of authentication. We do biometric authentication. I think it's really keen to be clear that we're talking about voice and face biometrics rather than traditional passwords, username, password, and so on. It's delivered as a service, and that's something that is very particular. We're not software as a service, so it isn't something that you need to download and implement yourself. It isn't something where you need to buy your own servers and download and install software on it. The Nomidio Identity service is consumed entirely as a service, so there's no footprint, no ongoing cost of ownership of a platform to be run. Also, the service is multi-factor, so and it's done implicitly in the design that it's multi-factor. So traditionally, you'll be aware of multi-factor being an additional layer of security for logins, where username and password isn't really secure enough. So we use other methods like sending an SMS message to something that you have, being your phone, or sending you an email with a code in it to produce another factor to authenticate against. In Nomidio, we do that behind the scenes with security keys and device identities around behind the scenes for the user, so that they don't have to do anything in particular, but a multi-factor is applied to the authentications when they log in. Also, we operate across multiple channels. As I said, we have two products, and they cover these channels. So contact centers and chatbots and chat, website logins and corporate apps and single sign-on. And that's what I'm going to show today, is that the sort of the corporate app logging into Salesforce. We operate with where individuals have an identity, create a digital identity within the Numidio cloud, and they do that once. So they only need to register once and to be able to use that many times. So for each new business that signs up and wants to manage identities, their users don't have to re-register and create a new identity for every place they want to sign into. And finally, the distinguishing feature is that the biometric interactions to do the authentications don't require an app to be downloaded. So you'll typically you'll probably use your mobile phone or possibly a laptop using voice and face capture, but it doesn't require an app to be downloaded, and that's quite important for users where you don't want to have to be downloading an app for every different digital relationship you have with a business, to have to download an app and use that to authenticate against. So the Numidio service is entirely app-free and interacts through the browser. And that becomes quite important when you're stepping across different channels. So, for example, you might not even be using a mobile phone when you're logging into your corporate apps and doing single sign-on. So not being tied to an app is particularly important. So that's the context of the biometric identity and using it to sign in. What I'm going to do now is go through a demonstration of using that in place to sign into Salesforce. So just to give you a bit of context about what's going on there and what that looks like, this is a fairly high level diagram of how the in this case OpenID identification process works, whereby we have a user, which is going to be me as someone trying to log into Salesforce with a browser. In order to do that, I go to the Salesforce website, and the Salesforce website then communicates with Numidio and asks Numidio to effectively authenticate me, which Numidio then does through the browser. It interacts with me as the end user to take my biometric samples and then authenticates them against my identity. And then Numidio communicates with, in this case, Salesforce, talks back to Salesforce to tell it who I am and that I've been authenticated successfully. And then Salesforce will log me in. So this is the flow of the user interaction. And what I'm going to show you now is the setup, which involves configuring Salesforce so that it can talk to Numidio for this part of the interaction, and then configuring Numidio so that it can talk to Salesforce for this part of the interaction. So there's a kind of a two-way interaction that's got to be set up. So that's what we're going to do. So without further ado, we'll come back to that in a minute. Let me show you, first of all, what the kind of end game is here. So I have, I'm going to end up with a Salesforce account that I can log into using my Numidio ID. So I've got a 30-second video here to show you. This is where we're going to end up, where in terms of logging into Numidio with logging into Salesforce with that Numidio ID. So this is just to show you how it'll work. It will be a Numidio login in Salesforce, which then goes to the Numidio service. This is the Numidio service running through, taking a face sample to record my face, and then taking a voice sample all through the browser.
I use my voice to prove my identity,
which then goes and authenticates me and returns to Salesforce and will log me into Salesforce without having to use username and password and so on. So that's where we want to end up. That's the goal. This is just vanilla Salesforce that we want to end up in. And the start point is that we don't have any of that. So I'm just showing you that video really just so you can see the context of what we want to end up with. So what I'm going to do now is a live demo of configuring that. So I have a Salesforce account set up for a business, and in this case the business is called Bravo Finance. And if I go to their login page, you'll see this is the standard Salesforce login page. and it's the Bravo Finance domain within that, but this is a Salesforce page, and all it's letting me do is log in like with a traditional username and password. So I can do that, and I've got to bring in my username and password. So I'm just going to do that and log in. And I'm an administrator in this Salesforce instance. If I get the right password, actually, if I get the right username, it might help. And the right password, bear with me. There we go. Right. So slowly but surely logged into Salesforce. Right. Okay. So if you recall from the diagram, there are two pieces to be done. One, Salesforce has to be shown how to talk to Nomidio, and the second, Nomidio shown how to talk to Salesforce. So in Salesforce, I do that by setting up an identity service authentication provider. So in authentication providers, you'll see that I already have one set up that I've done previously, but I'm going to set up a new one here. And this is the bit where I tell Salesforce how to talk to Nomidio. And what will happen here is there's a bit of a chicken and egg in that Salesforce has to know how to talk to Nomidio, but it doesn't know how to do that until I've set up Nomidio, and Nomidio needs to talk to Salesforce, but it doesn't know until I've set up Salesforce. So there's a little bit of toing and froing where I'll get halfway through doing this and have to go and do the Nomidio piece. So let's start this off at least. So you see that Salesforce allows you to set up authentication providers from different places. So, for example, you can bring your Google ID if you want to sign in with that, or sign in with your LinkedIn ID. And it also does the OpenID Connect standard, which is what we're going to use, which is what Nomidio OpenID does. So let's give this a name. Let's call it Nomidio OpenID. So this is what will be presented to the user when they log in as a choice. In fact, why don't we put the date in it so you can see that it's genuinely being done today, 16th of December, gets a suffix, and now we need to give it the consumer key and secret. So this is basically the username and password, if you like, for the Nomidio account that it's going to be using. So we've reached the point where I need to get to Nomidio. So Nomidio, I'm going to now set up the Nomidio account, and Nomidio is a product which is available from the AWS Marketplace. So if I go to the AWS Marketplace, I'm going to subscribe to the Nomidio service, and you'll see how I then connect it up. So I need to sign in to the Marketplace, and I'm going to do that as the Bravo user. So this is signing into Bravo Finance's AWS account, because when I subscribe to this service, that's me actually buying it and contracting to use the service. So let's just put in OpenID and see what we get. Right, there we go. So this is the Nomidio product. We go to the product listing. You'll see this is the publicly available information about the product. Gives you all the details of it. There's a free trial that you can subscribe to, so it doesn't cost you anything to actually get it up and running. The pricing and the pricing structures are all enumerated. There's a quick start guide, which I'm going to briefly download, and we'll come back to that in a minute, because that's got some useful information about how to do what we're about to do. And then to buy a product in the marketplace, basically what you do is you subscribe to it. So I'm going to click that, and it takes you to a page which basically explains what you're about to commit to contractually, explains the pricing and whether it's a contract or whatever. And in this case, I'm already subscribed to it, so it knows that and said, okay, you can't subscribe again, but I can go and look at the setup for my account. So this is what would happen when I would subscribe as a new user as well. I'm redirected to the Nomidio site, so I'm now subscribed to that AWS product, and I'm now going to just configure it within the Nomidio service. So I am Bravo Finance. It knows that already. It knows where I am, and I'm going to show it my administrator's details, which it will set up. In this case, this is already set up, so I'll be able to log in as an administrator. Simple as that. That's all you really need to do. And then I can log in. So I log in as an administrator and use the correct username and password, which I have readily prepared. And then I'll have to do an MFA. Actually, interestingly, we're just in the process of releasing using Nomidio to sign into the Numidio admin here, rather than having to go through these authentication processes. So I've got my authenticator app on my phone, and that gives me the code 364941. Right, here we are. So now I'm logged into Numidio. So I've got Salesforce on one end ready to go, and on this end, Numidio. So this is the sort of front page of Numidio, shows me the different usage for the different products, shows me the usage for the OpenID product. And to configure this, I need to set up an application link for Salesforce. I've got a few set up here already, but I'm going to set up a new one. So let's add a new application. Let's call it Bravo Salesforce. So it creates the application somewhere. Where's that gone? There it is, right at the bottom of the list. That's handy. And then in order to configure it, just as we did in Salesforce, I need to set up the technical details of how to talk to Salesforce. So I get a choice of different ways to do this. In this particular case, Salesforce uses the OpenID Connect standard. So we're going to use that. And it has things called scopes, which are the basic envelopes, if you like, by which the questions and answers are made between the services. So I'm going to keep those three. Those three will come into play in a second in Salesforce, as you'll see. And now I need to put in the redirect URLs for Salesforce. Now I don't have those yet, so this is the chicken and egg again. So I'm going to submit this to start with, and I'll come back and put those URLs in. What it's now giving me is the client ID and secret, the username and password, if you like, for the Numidio service, which I can now give to Salesforce. So there's buttons here that let me copy that. So I'm going to go back to Salesforce, and I'm going to paste in the ID. And next it wants the secret. So I'm going to come back to the admin and copy the secret. I don't need to know what it is. I don't even need to see it, although I probably will do here, see a little bit of it. So that's username and password. And then Salesforce wants to know the endpoints that it can talk to Numidio through, so the URLs for that. Now, those are given in the documentation. They're fixed. It's not overly complicated to figure them out. If you've got an automated system, which Salesforce isn't, unfortunately, but you can do a thing called automated discovery, whereby the service can go to Numidio and ask it what these URLs are, and it will find them automatically. But in this case, I have to do them manually, so I'm just going to copy and paste them from there into Salesforce. So let's go back to Salesforce and get ready for them. So it wants the endpoint, the authorized endpoint, which I just copy and paste. Oh, no, that's the secret. We don't want to see that. Let's get the actual thing. There we go. Token endpoint. So again, these are just fixed bits of text that I'm copying and pasting. I'm not doing anything terribly technically advanced here, I don't think. And then the final one is the token issuer, which is Numidio itself. Let's copy that. This goes in here. And then, so that's the how do I talk to Numidio part. Final bit is scopes. So if you remember, we talked about the scopes from the Numidio side, which were the OpenID, profile, and email. And I'm just going to paste those in there. Nice and simple. That needs to be ticked. I'm not setting up a URL for errors and log. We're not doing log out. There's a thing called a registration handler, and you can just generate that automatically in Salesforce. Which I've already got one there. And that basically handles what you do when a new user turns up. How do you register them? I'm going to tell it that it can operate this as me because I'm an administrator, so I have the privilege to do that. then the final thing is I'm going to give it a URL for a little icon so that when it appears on the page, it has a nice icon to show that it's Nomidio. There we go. So that's it. That's all I have to do. I save that. So that's now set up this authentication provider with all those details. And in doing that, you'll see what it's now done is Salesforce has now created URLs for the conversation in the other direction. So these are the endpoints that Nomidio needs to know in order to talk to Salesforce. So I'm now going to take these and copy and paste them back to Nomidio, nice and simple. So they go into the client. Remember, we got to here and we didn't have them, so I'm going to put them in now. They can go in any order. It's just that 4 in the middle here, the single sign-on endpoint, endpoint 4, existing users, initialization endpoint, and finally the callback URL. We're not doing logout, so we don't need that one. And save those. So that's both sides of the equation now set up. So that's the integration completed, really. There's now just 2 things I need to do. One, at the Numidio end, I need to be able to set a policy to say when someone tries to log in using Numidio, what are the rules to say who can and who can't? And in this case, I'm just going to set a very simple rule, which is the Bravo Finance sales team. So basically, you've got to have a particular email. You've got to have a corporate email domain in order to be recognized and log in. So that kind of restricts it, if you like, to Bravo employees only. And I'm going to set the authentication level to high, which means I'm going to need to do a face and a voice check in order to log in. So that configures the Numidio end of things. And then the final piece on Salesforce, I've set up the authentication provider, but I need to just make that appear in the login page. So if I go to company settings, in the domain, this is where you just configure what the login page looks like. At the moment, you'll see it's just using the login form. I'm going to edit that. And that's where you put your username and password if you want to, but it gives you a choice of other authentication providers. And you'll see here, the one I've just set up, the 16th of December one, is new. So I'm going to say, yeah, I want that as well. And that's it. So that is the whole process of integrating the two services together. Doesn't take very long. It's really not very technical. And let me now give you the proof of the pudding. If I log out from Salesforce, I will appear at the login page, and it's the same Salesforce login page for Bravo Finance, but now you'll see that as well as the username and password, it's giving me the option to use an identity provider, sorry. In this case, it's, as we named it, the Nomidio OpenID, 16th of December. So very simple to do. Let me just give you the real proof of that. I'm going to log in using it. This might be slightly not glitchy, but a little bit stuttery because I'm doing it on my laptop as well as casting and all the rest of it. So there might be a few little jumpy moments. And the other thing is when I complete the login, because this is the first time I'm using my identity with this particular authentication service that I've just set up, it will ask me to give my consent to actually use it, which is a single step which doesn't then happen again in future logins. So first thing I do is give it camera access, put my face in the mobile, in the oval. This has all just been done on my laptop. I'm sitting in front of my laptop, nice and easy to do. Give it microphone access and repeat the phrase that it's asking me to there. I use my voice to prove my identity. Despite having a bit of a sore throat and a bit of a cough, this won't be a problem. Verifies me, and en route to redirecting me, here we are getting approval. So it's saying Bravo Finance wants to use my ID to access Salesforce. So I'm going to consent to it doing that. And it's letting me know that it's going to share the following data, my first and last name and email, which come from my personal Nomidio ID, has that information in it. So it's just making sure that I give consent to all that data sharing. When I accept that, I'll then be redirected and logged into Salesforce, hopefully. Gets there in the end. Yeah, there we go. So there we go. I'm logged in without using username, passwordless, just using biometrics. So there we go. That's as simple as it gets in terms of the integrations. Let me find my presentation. There we go. So that concludes the demonstration for that. I hope you can see that's a pretty quick and simple way to do things. It's really not very technical. If I sit down and do that from the manual without having to explain it to everybody, it'd probably take me about 10 or 12 minutes. And that has now created a full biometric identity authentication service to use on, in this case, a public application through Salesforce. So that's the Nomidio OpenID product. Both of these products are available through the AWS Marketplace. And there is, as I said, a free trial for both of them whereby you can use them for a month and you can do what I've just done for yourself. You can log in, create identities and integrate them and use them with no charge. So without further ado, I'm going to bring that to a close and we will take any questions if anybody's got any.